Hey folks, it's Jeff Gothelf from Sense and Respond Press, and I'm here today with Elena Astilleros, who is the author of the forthcoming Sense and Respond Press book, The Invisible Leader, and she is an Agile coach in California. Elena, thanks so much for being here with us. Anything else you want to tell the folks before we get started?
Just that I've been a guerrilla Agile coach for years now, and I'm committed to taking the boundaries of what digital transformation is to expand what's possible. And I'm really passionate about that.
Fantastic. Let's share some of your knowledge. So The Invisible Leader is about facilitation, transparent leadership, that type of thing. And look, everyone thinks they can lead teams and meetings and events, right? But very few are actually trained in doing this. Where do most people get facilitation wrong?
I actually think I'm going to start with your question. I think the idea of that there's a right and there's a wrong is the limitation. So the fact is that they are leaders. They can lead, they can manage, but are they getting what's possible and what's available to them? Is it the most effective way to manage and to lead the meeting? So I think when we start living in the right and wrong and stop thinking about the infinite possibilities that's available in a meeting with 12 people, with even 3 people, there's so many different variations of what can come out that we get stuck on one possibility and we limit everything else, every other innovative possibility out there. So new facilitators, they'll come out with one, or not even, they won't even think of themselves as facilitators. They're leaders, and they're meeting and they're trying to get their needs met, and they have one vision of what's right. And when people don't do what's right, they get really frustrated and they start focusing on, like, they're not doing it right. And all of a sudden they're not realizing that they're affecting the meeting and they're closing down possibilities of what's available.
Got it. So it's not even a matter of there's a right way and a wrong way. There's so many infinite variations. It's really what it is that you're trying to get out of the meeting itself. Got it. And so if someone's trying to become a better facilitator, to lead these kind of events or meetings more successfully, what's the first thing that you would recommend for them to do?
I think the first thing is getting very clear on what the outcome is and why it's valuable. And not only just valuable for the business or valuable for themselves, but valuable for all of the other things that the meeting attendees will have competing for them. I think we often take for granted, especially the status meeting where everybody's eyes are bleeding and they're dying. We take for granted that all of these people have other things, other ways of being productive than sitting there waiting for their 5 minutes to give their status and then kind of zoning out for the rest of the time.
Yeah.
I think getting very intentional about that and understanding that you as a leader, the person who's driving the meeting, is setting the context and is showing what's permissible, what's not permissible. They're setting how people act and how people show up.
Got it. That's great. Look, and it's amazing how transferable this concept of outcomes is from product to process to leadership to facilitation, right? Really understanding what we're trying to get people to do and how we're trying to get them to change their behavior, which is fantastic. Cool. Last question. What's the funniest thing that's ever happened to you in the context of work?
Okay, so I had this meeting and I was so proud of myself. I had revamped all of the materials. We had these visuals, and I just so proud of the way the meeting was being presented and the way people were sharing. But at the end of the meeting, somebody came up and just said, and it was in Spanish. Mm-hmm. Somebody came up and said, "Elena, your Spanish was the worst Spanish I've ever heard in my life."
No.
And part of what I realized is that, we can have all these flashy things, but the basics and connection and really being with the person is what matters in a meeting.
That's amazing. And good, and really good lesson in the end, right? Is like getting the fundamentals right is fantastic. Awesome. Elena, thanks so much for spending a couple of minutes with me answering these great questions. Looking forward to your book coming out, The Invisible Leader, on Sense and Respond Press. And thanks again.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Okay.
Take care.